guys, welcome back to Promote the Goat Homestead. I am Amelia. It is quite yucky out today. It rained a little bit this morning, then the sun came out and it disappeared again. So we're having rain showers. So it's just a gloomy day. I'm going to try something a little different. We'll see how well I can do this. I'm going to try to talk to you guys and multitask by doing chores at the same time. So we'll see how this goes. Today's weather kind of matches today's topic. This is something that I have been thinking about for a long time. Knew I wanted to share with you guys, and I was just kind of waiting till we were done with kidding season and then just trying to gather my thoughts on all this. And today's topic is in regards to kidding season, and I'm just doing a reflection on it and explaining to you guys how kidding season went and the results of it and what we plan to do in the future so that we're not doing this again. This was the worst kidding season that we had. Maybe I should backtrack here. Let's see here. Let me get feed first. I don't think I can multitask and talk at the same time. So let me get this feed out and then we'll come back to this. Noah was in a meeting, and so I had to go in the house because Cody woke up early from his nap. But he's done with his meeting. I got the kiddos something to eat, so now I'm heading back out to do chores. So I figured we could chit chat on the way down where I left off. Noah and I have been raising goats for 10 years now. I believe it was 2000. Well, that would make it 2013. We were talking about that before I came out the first time when we got our first goats. So we've been in this for 10 years. I was in 4-H for 10 years before that. So I have nearly 20 years of experience raising and breeding goats. And so I consider myself, a seasoned goat breeder. And after this kidding season, I don't feel so seasoned. We had 21 kids that we know of, and I'll, explain more of that later of why it's as we know of. And we lost 11 kids. So that was 52% of our crop this year. And we thought last year was bad, and last year was 24%, which, even that is bad. But geez, half your crop is awful. And it started out, these kids we're not even accounting for because we don't even know if it was a single or twins because we never found them. But we had a doe over the winter that miscarried. I had wormed her, and we don't know if this is related to having used the wormer because we've used this wormer before on pregnant does and not had any issues. But we wormed her, and 2 or 3 days later she miscarried. We never found these kids. Noah walked the field and didn't find anything, but she had bloody discharge in her back end, and so that's how we knew that she had miscarried. Then to start off our season, we had a first freshener, which would be a first-time mom, was obviously in labor. I found her down at the barn. Hi, Jasmine. I lost my train of thought. I found her, saw she was in labor, saw that she'd been pushing. It appeared she'd been pushing for a while and was struggling. So I went to the house and got Noah, and I think this may have been on Christmas break, maybe, because my mom was home. So she came back to watch the kids while we came down here, and we worked and worked and worked and could not get that kid out. We could barely get our hands in there. That's how small it was. So we don't know if she had... This is another one would not have been accounted for. We don't know if she had one large kid, which very well could have been the case, or if she had twins in there. That's all we could feel was the head of one. And it was so tight in there that we could not maneuver anything around. So we had to put her down because we could not get anywhere. Then we had one of my milk does, Daisy. We found what we assumed was a stillborn. She had twins. One was alive, one was not. She's a great mom. So that's what our conclusion is. We had other kids that were fine one day. We came out the next day. They were dead. We don't know if another goat killed them. Goats are pretty much jerks. They are jerks to each other. There's a pecking order. All species of animals have a pecking order that are in groups. And goats are just jerks to each other. And if there's a goat that's got its head stuck in the fence, if they're on the same side as them, they'll be headbutting them while their head is stuck in the fence, or they'll be on the other side hitting heads with them because their head is stuck in the fence. Or, a goat is sick and they'll just come and ram into them, or I don't like how close you are to me, so I'm going to ram into you. They're just jerks. So that's kind of what we're speculating. We really don't know, but if these kids appeared healthy the day before and then suddenly they were dead the next day that we came down, that's just kind of our thought process. Let's see. We had a doe who rejected her kids. They didn't get colostrum in time. They died. We had kids that weren't getting enough to eat, caught that too late, and they died. We had a doe. This was very, very bizarre. This was Juju. So she would have been in our last 3. Poppy, I'm pretty sure, is not bred. So really it was the last 2 does that kidded. We came down one day. It appeared that she was passing after birth because of what was hanging out her back end. There were no kids in sight. Very bizarre. I looked around out in the field because this is the doe that we had kept with our bucks. So that last year we had troubles with her. Her kids got too big. So that is why we kept her in with the bucks. So all she was getting was hay. She wasn't getting grain. So hopefully we would help solve that problem of the kids getting too big. And so did not see anything in the pen. Did not see anything in the pasture where they had access to. Noah looked later on because he actually checked her to make sure that there was nothing inside that was stuck. Did not feel anything. So I think he even said that it felt like, I don't think he could get in very far because things that felt like were closing because we had thought she had passed her after birth. And then he looked on our large compost pile that we have out here, and he said that there was some goat hair. There was white hair, assuming goat hair, that was on the pile. And then something that I think he said resembled like loose skin. So we don't know if our dogs had found something and they drug it up there. Our dogs have been with our goats for 7 years now. Have never had issues with them like killing anything. Yes, they will eat the afterbirth from the does, but other than that, we haven't had any issues. So we don't think that the dogs did anything to the babies. We don't know what was up there. Excuse me. So a week later, this happened. I can't remember if it was a Saturday or Sunday. I'd have to go back and look at my notes, but I know it was on a Sunday. I came down. And I had been keeping an eye on her all week, for mastitis or her acting off or anything. And she didn't quite act right, but I wouldn't say that she was sick. And I came down that day and I noticed that she was standing and just looked off. And I went back there and she had a goat kid hanging out. And it was just the head that you could see. Obviously, it was dead. And so Noah was out burning a pile of branches and trees and stuff that he'd ripped out last summer, and then scrap wood from the barn, things like that. So I flagged him down and had him come and so that we could get this kid out. And so he pulled her out, thankfully, because I had just gotten over the stomach bug and the smell was atrocious. As you can imagine, something that stays in there that is dead, it's going to smell bad. I feel like I was on an episode of Dr. Pull. But he pulled it out, and thankfully he was able to get it out all in one piece. Things weren't like falling apart or anything, but that was so bizarre. A whole entire week, and we thought she had passed her after birth, and here she had a kid inside of her this whole time. But we treated her with antibiotics, and you never know anything had happened. She was totally fine. But that was kind of what ended our kidding season. Paisley had twins, so we did ended up on a good note. They are healthy, doing great. But it was an awful season. And because of this, we had a serious conversation of, do we want to keep the goats? Now, the dairy goats are going to stay. Those are my thing. The meat goats are what Noah and I do together. The dairy goats are my thing. I have plans for them in the future with goat milk soap and things like that. And I'll touch more on that on a different video. But for this video, it's just kind of on the meat, talking about the kidding season and such, and the future of our meat goat herd. And we had a serious conversation of, do we want to keep them? We're losing money. This isn't the only year. We had a year that was really bad. We lost a lot of kids and a lot of adults to coccidiosis. So it's just, we feel like we've had bad luck the whole entire time. Anything you can think of that has happened bad with goats, we feel like has happened to us. We've had 2 buck kids that got urinary calculi. Like I said, we've lost numerous goats to coccidiosis. That's probably been the worst thing. Coccidiosis and parasites. And we had a goat that we treated one year for, we don't know if it was polio or, if I'm saying this correctly, meningeal worm, which I think is a parasite they can pick up from deer. And it affects them neurologically, and so does polio. Polio is not like how it is on people. For polio, for goats, it is vitamin B deficiency. So we treat her for both. She actually recovered, but that's just an uncommon thing to have. We've treated mastitis. We've had goats with CL before that we've had to call. I mean, you name it, I feel like we have dealt with it. The only thing, thankfully, we have not dealt with is yonis, which that can be very detrimental to your herd because it causes severe diarrhea, and it's incurable. It's a disease that they call it wasting disease, and cattle can get it as well. But thankfully, we have not dealt with that. But like I said, we just feel like we've had bad luck and just throwing money down the drain. And so Noah was much more open to getting rid of them right away. For me, I really had to mull this around. And we talked about this, since January is when our kidding season mostly happened, beginning of January. And so we've had lots of serious conversations, and I think that we've come down to deciding on keeping 4 or 5 does. Like, we are calling hard. And if that's a term that's unfamiliar, that just means that we are getting rid of the goats that do not fit our breeding program. And so we are significantly downsizing. Like last year after we kidded, we had 50 goats total. And then of course we got rid of goat kids. We got rid of some adults that did not fit, our standard of what we wanted in our program. And then this year we're doing the same thing, I have to get out my notes here. I made notes for this. Oh, you know what? I think I left them in the house. I don't think I have them in here. Nope. I must have left them in the house. But any goats that don't fit our standard for our breeding program. Now, this is going to look for everybody. This is going to look different, but this is what's for us. They have to have good mothering skills. Just straight out the gate, they have to be able to clean off their kids, be attentive to them, make sure that they are keeping an eye on them. They have to clean their back ends. We've had several moms that they won't, sometimes the beginning poop, it's like an orangish yellowy color. It's very sticky, and it can if it gets stuck on their tail, then it really goops up. And usually the moms keep their bottoms clean. Well, if they don't, then once it builds up, like you check it one day, then the next day, quite a bit of it can get stuck on there. So we make sure that we have moms that keep their kids clean, that are attentive to them, keep track of them. Sometimes you've got moms that will feed them, but they don't really pay attention to them, and they're hollering for them, looking for them. They're not protecting them. Like I said, goats are jerks. And that's what we think happened with some of them. They got killed because their moms weren't paying attention to them. They have to birth easily. We want to be as hands-off with our animals as we can. So we would like our goats to birth without assistance. Yes, occasionally they do need assistance. Like kids can get tangled up inside and they cannot come out. Last year we had 2 kids that were trying to come out at the same time, and we had to assist with that. There are exceptions to the rule. However, we don't want to keep does that are birthing year after year that have to have kids pulled. So we want to make sure that we call goats that are like that. Let's see, I mentioned birthing easily, attentiveness, milk production. They have to be able to produce enough milk to feed twins, which I guess I'll go ahead and say this. They have to have at least twins. The exception of the rule is if they're a first-time kidder, they can have a single, but after that, they need to be having twins in order to be producing enough to be worth our efforts for them to stay here on the farm. And going back to producing enough milk, we've had does that will feed twins, but those twins don't grow well because they're not producing enough. They have to have good feet so they're not requiring constant care, and they're strong on their pasturing so that their feet aren't breaking down, over time, and, that affecting their longevity. Trying to think what else. They have to be able to keep good body condition while they are nursing kids. They have to be hardy so that they are more parasite resistant and resistant, to other issues like coccidiosis, things like that. They have to be, I don't want to say like high on the pecking order, but like I said, goats are jerks. And if you are low on the pecking order, you're more susceptible to, sickness because they're going to get stressed out. We've had goats that are low in the pecking order, and then you have to baby them because they're not getting enough to eat. So they have to be, like, I don't want to say aggressive because we don't want them to be overly aggressive, but they need to be aggressive enough that they can hold their own in the herd. I'll rattle them off if more come to me, but that's kind of where we are now. And you might wonder, like, why are you sharing this? Like, you're promote the goat. That's what you're supposed to be doing, like promoting the goat. And it's just, I want to be an open book with what we do. It's easy on social media to share all the good things, but when it's tough to share, when things don't go well. I mean, we lost 50% of our goats. It's like, and you've been doing this for 20 years, like for me personally. And it's like, don't you know what you're doing by now? And, some things are out of our control, but, like I want to share, the bad things too. That way you can learn from my mistakes. I'm learning too. I want to constantly learn. I don't want to ever quit learning while I'm raising goats. There's always things that you can do better and make improvements. And I guess that leads me to the next thing. I've already mentioned the future of our herd, keeping about like 5 of our meat goats. We're almost starting over. And then, plans for this year as we continue and for next year. We've already gotten rid of 18 goats, I think. Some of that includes our goat kids. I had posted a photo on our Facebook page. If you are new here, that would be Chastine Farms. Go ahead and go check us out for regular updates. But we got rid of those guys. And then we got rid of multiple does and yearlings that weren't growing well from last year. And then we have 2, maybe 3 if we keep her, does that are nicer but don't fit our standard for our program. So we are going to try to sell them as breeders to somebody else. They might work better for somebody else's program. But what we planned, maybe let me backtrack here. Some of the things I think that we could have done better and that may have helped our kidding season is last year, because we did not have things set up properly, our buck was in with our does the whole entire year. And this is crazy. We had a cool spell in July and our does came in heat. And so that's how we had does kidding in January, because we had that cool spell. That has never happened with us. And so the does, because they came into heat and came into heat in July, they didn't have the long rest period that they would normally have. Normally we would not start breeding until October. And so that, for some does, like our last doe kidded last May. So she did not have a very long break to recover and get her body condition back and all that stuff. Usually also in the fall, we give our does copper bolus and selenium, 2 things that are deficient in this area, and 2 things that are very essential to goats. And that also, selenium helps with fertility as well, which we had some singles this year that we should not have had singles. So we are going to say that was probably from that. We also check eyes on a regular basis, and we're able to do that, with our normal maintenance that we would do in the fall before we would put them in with the buck. We also didn't have loose minerals available like we should have. I had a feeder up. The kids were constantly getting in it. Well, when I say kids, I don't mean like children, human children. I mean like goat kids were getting in it. They were getting it yucky. I think with what I was working with, it eventually got knocked off by somebody and it never got rehung up with the pan that I was using. So the goats weren't getting loose minerals like they should, which is very essential to good goat health. I'm trying to think what else that we could have done better. That may have been it, like those essentials. Like I said, I wrote down notes and I think I left it up at the house because it's not in my pocket unless it fell out somewhere. But there were other things that were out of our control. So it's just kind of going with what we can do. So now the goats do have loose mineral. We also have a better feeding station so that they can actually eat and it's not getting yucky from goats sticking their feet in the troughs. We've been going through and trying to, because they're smaller numbers, it's easier to keep a better eye on them individually and seeing, you know, like, you're not doing so well, let me check your eyes, or keeping FOMACHA scores. And that's something I want to do on a regular basis, probably more so a monthly basis, is checking their FOMACHA. If you're not familiar with that, you pull their eyelid down and you check the color. You want it to be like a bright pink to, or maybe I should say a dark pink, almost red, but they do on a scale from 1 to 5. White being the worst, you know, the brighter the pink red, the better. So checking that on a regular basis. I think that's kind of it for like what we're doing now. Like long term, some of these things probably won't take place until next year. But I want to rotate pastures. And I say that probably won't take place till next year because I have to be mindful of my time. I have 3 young kids, 7 to Cody's almost 18 months old. Maybe I have to be mindful of my time. So Cody will be 2 next year when I try to do this. So hopefully rotating pastures, and that'll help keep, goats are browsers. They were natural browsers, not grazers. So you want to keep their heads off the ground. So I've heard people say nothing below 6 inches should a goat be eating. So my goal for next year is maybe rotate pastures and see if that makes a difference. We also want to get a handling station. So a way to get all the goats into one space and then almost like run them through a chute or something. So that's why it's easier to catch them. Because right now it's kind of an agility workout trying to catch goats. And there are different things, like we have a shepherd's hook and things like that we can use to make it easier. But it can be frustrating when trying to handle goats. So doing that. For our breed, right now we have like our main focus was on the Savannah breed. And I think we're going to pivot a little bit and change that and try to bring in some Kikos maybe for higher milk production, hardiness. We also talked about getting a boar buck to help add muscle to the kids, because Kikos aren't overly muscular in terms of other meat breeds, but they are still considered a meat breed. So that'll be kind of long term. Also trying to promote our goats that we have available, selling breeding stock, trying to figure out what we're going to do with our buck kids that we get. You know, we initially wanted to sell goat meat at farmers market. We did that for 2 years, but I think easing back into the farmers market is going to be a slower process just because of everything that we've taken on and them trying to balance that with family as well. So trying to see if we want to raise large groups and send them to a specific market, or seeing if somebody who already does farmers market, if they would want to buy meat from us and then sell it, so that we would just be the producer and then they would be the ones, it would be in their hands then after they were slaughtered. Yeah, I can't think of anything else. I'm sure there's more. There's probably stuff that I'm free. Oh, a mineral buffet. Like I mentioned, we have loose mineral out. We also have Redmond sea salt that we have available to them. Baking soda is also something else you have available. It's kind of controversial, but if the goats have a free choice, if they get an upset stomach, it's, you know, an option for them to eat. Goats are good about self-medicating. So that's why I would like to have a mineral buffet. And so that would having individual minerals out so they could eat what they felt like they needed. Now, trying to do that can be pricey. And so that's kind of why I'm hesitant on doing it. And that's something I need to talk over with Noah some more. I've mentioned it here and there. Now that we'll have a smaller herd, it would be more manageable, but you know, it's one of those things we'll see. But that would help with goat health as well. I think that was probably my last point. So that's just kind of, that's where we stand. We'll still have the goats. We're just kind of almost like starting over is how I feel. And this was a really tough decision for me. It really felt like failure almost, especially with selling the goats. And maybe I'm too stubborn or too stupid that I want to keep doing this, and maybe it's a little bit of both. Now the goats are starting to trickle in. It's starting to get dark out again, so I wonder if it's another storm's coming in. But yeah, like I said, this was a tough decision for me. But I just have to look at it as another learning opportunity. And, you know, hopefully things will start looking up and, you know, having something that's more manageable. That's something I need to do this year, is try to be mindful of my time and not stretch myself so thin. If we were going to sell the goats like we are doing now, I really wish we'd have done this before we moved, because that would have made things so much easier and so much less stressful for me, because I'm the one that handles most of the goat care. Noah has an off-farm job. Even though he works from home, he still has to do his job and his duties. And there's been a lot of things with the house that have kind of not gone as planned, and so he's been handling all of that. And then, you know, previous videos with the barn repair, that was kind of an unexpected occurrence and expense. So it's just kind of trying to fine-tune things this year, I guess you could say. This will be the year of fine-tuning things and trying to get systems into place. I want to get the kids more involved, and maybe they can start taking things over to help lighten my load. So I'm trying to slow down, I guess, and trying to decrease stressors. But I guess I've covered everything for this video. I just want to say thank you for those who have subscribed. This is like my creative outlet. This is my happy place, getting to do this. So I thank you for those who have subscribed and watched my videos, and I appreciate that. And, you know, taking your time out of your day to spend it with me and see what we're doing here. I hope that I inspire you and entertain you and hopefully teach you a thing or two. Learn from my mistakes. Well, like I said, I just want to say thank you, and that's it for today, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Bye.